Hey, what's up everyone? This is MusicTechHelpGuy, and in this video, I'm going to show you my top 10 troubleshooting tips for Logic Pro. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of emails and comments from people with particular buggy issues with Logic, and I've compiled this list of tips and tricks for troubleshooting Logic that will fix, in my experience, about 95% of problems you'll have with Logic, whether it's a system overload issue or a sample rate sync issue or functions being buggy or projects getting corrupted. There's a solution for each of these issues. Now, most issues in Logic can be solved by completely uninstalling and reinstalling Logic, but that's sort of a last resort. Now, before I get into the tutorial, I want to quickly tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Boombox. If you're a musician, songwriter, producer, and you work with collaborators on a regular basis, you've got to give Boombox a try. Boombox.io is an incredible new service that allows you to upload your tracks and then invite collaborators to view, download, and leave time-stamped feedback on your tracks. And if there are royalties involved, you can even manage the splits between your co-writers and co-producers. Boombox also has a sync app for macOS, which allows you to upload tracks, stems, multi-tracks, and even full DAW sessions directly from your macOS desktop. Boombox.io is absolutely free to get started, so sign up for an account today to get 4 GB of free storage. Okay, let's start with system overloads. You have all likely seen this dialog pop up at some point or another, and this is telling you that your Mac's processor cannot keep up with the tasks you are trying to do in Logic. This could be too many plugins, too many software instruments, or even an automation problem. So I'll show you 3 methods to fix this. Unless you are completely new to using Logic, you probably already know this first one, but I'm going to show it anyway just in case. Go up to Logic Pro Settings and go to Audio. Now, Settings used to be called Preferences. It's now called Settings on the newer versions of Logic. So here you're going to go to Devices. And one of the first things you want to check when you're getting system overloads is you want to make sure to increase your I/O buffer size to its maximum setting. This is going to give you more processing power for your project at the cost of adding latency. However, unless you're recording, latency really isn't going to be an issue. So anytime I'm editing or mixing, I switch this to a high value, and then when I'm recording, I'll set this to a lower or mid-range value to minimize the latency. But most of the time, I'm keeping this on its maximum setting. Additionally, you can try setting your process buffer range, the multi-threading, and summing options to some different options and experiment with those and see which one works the smoothest. In the past, when I had an older computer, I often found it was helpful to set the summing to standard precision, which is 32-bit, hit apply, finish your project, and then right before you bounce your project, switch this back to 64, hit apply, and then bounce the project. You're probably not going to hear much of a difference in terms of quality in your project. I do think it affects like your mixing headroom that you have, but 32-bit is generally going to be just fine for most things, especially if you're mixing properly. If your project doesn't include automation or it's not a priority for the automation to be sample accurate, you can actually reduce the CPU load by turning off sample accurate automation. To do this, once again, you're going to go to Logic Pro Settings, Audio, but this time you're going to go to the General tab. In here, you can actually turn on or off your audio engine overload messages. If you turn this off and you get an audio overload, what's going to happen is playback is just going to stop, but that little dialog is not going to pop up. So it's a way to save some time if you're constantly dealing with that. But what I'm really looking at here for automation is this sample accurate automation. If you set this to volume pan, sends, and plugin parameters, this is basically going to make sure that all automation is sample accurate. You can try a mid-range value where it doesn't apply sample accurate plugin parameters, or you can just turn this off. So if your project has no automation in it, or it's not essential for it to be sample accurate, you can just set this to off. But just keep in mind that everything you do in the settings is global. So this is going to apply to every project you open. So if you have another project that you open that does have automation in it, and has plugin parameter automation in it, you're going to want to turn this on. But this is just a way to save some processing power if automation is not a priority in your projects. If you use a lot of sampler instruments, you can also try optimizing the sampler virtual memory settings. So once again, to do this, you're going to go up to Logic Pro, Settings, Audio. This will take us back to the same area where we were before, but this time we're going to click on Sampler, and then you're going to go to the Virtual Memory tab. So here you can turn on or off your sampler virtual memory. What turning on virtual memory does is it only loads in a small portion of each audio sample into sampler, into memory, and then just the rest of the sample is streamed in real time, which eats up more processing power, but makes load times a heck of a lot better. If you turn this option off, you're going to be loading the entire instrument into memory each time you load a new sampler instrument, which is going to require less processing power, but more memory, and it can slow down your load times. So a way to determine whether you need to do this or not is to go up to your LCD display and click here and set this to custom. Then click right here on your CPU performance meter, play back your project, and see if you're getting a lot of processing threads spiking or peaking. If that's happening as you play your sampler instruments, you may want to turn this option off, and you'll see those spikes go away. Now, if you're still getting system overloads despite trying all of that, it's likely that your Mac just really cannot keep up with the load you're trying to give it. A solution for this is to freeze some of your tracks, in particular, tracks that have a lot of CPU-heavy plugins or sample-based instruments. Now, to freeze a track or multiple tracks, right-click or control-click on one of the track headers over here, go to Track Header Components, and then make sure that the freeze option is shown. And this will show this little snowflake button on every single track. Now, if you click on this, this means you are turning on freeze mode for that track. If I press play, what Logic is going to do is it's essentially going to bounce these MIDI regions along with the instrument on each track, any MIDI effects on that track, and depending on what mode you have selected, the audio effects into an audio file. So it's kind of a way to bounce in place to audio temporarily, and then you can unfreeze the track to get back to the original and make changes. So that's the key thing here is you don't want to freeze a track that you need to make changes to. You're only going to want to do this to tracks that have already been composed, and maybe you just want to focus on the mixing and free up some processing power and some memory from your software instruments on the tracks. I find this incredibly helpful when you have a lot of sample-based instruments, like you're using a lot of instances of Contact or some other third-party sample-based instrument. Before I press play to freeze these, I do want to show you that in the track inspector, there are actually two different freeze modes. Pre-fader means that everything coming before the fader in the signal chain will be frozen. It'll be bounced to audio. So this includes your MIDI effects, it includes your instrument, it includes your audio effects, but it does not include the sends, it doesn't include the pan or the volume. Just a fun fact here, pan actually comes after volume in the signal chain, even though it appears above the volume fader. So that's pre-fader mode. That's basically if you want to bounce everything into the audio file. If you use source only, this is only going to bounce the MIDI effect and the instrument, and it's going to leave the audio effects alone, so you can still make mix changes to that track, and you can still make changes to the plugins on that track. So those are the two modes, and you'll see that in source only, it's green, and then in pre-fader mode, it's blue. So just keep that in mind. And if I go to pre-fader here and then just press play, you'll see that it freezes both of those tracks. This is not exactly like a bounce in place. It's not going to show audio on the track, but essentially what it's doing is converting the track into an audio file, because playing an audio file takes up a hell of a lot less processing power than playing MIDI through a software instrument. But once it's frozen, you can just play the track normally. Now, if I go into one of these MIDI regions and I want to change the MIDI, let's say I want to shift this up or something, it's going to tell me, hey, your track is frozen. In order to make changes, you're going to have to unfreeze the track in order to make that change. And then if you need to, you can refreeze that track if need be. Another stop up you might have had is the synchronization error. This will typically say error while trying to synchronize audio and MIDI, and then it gives you some whacked out sample rate value. My understanding is that this means that a device in your setup is not in sync with Logic and your computer. And this is typically going to be your audio interface. Now, this one's actually really simple to fix. Just go up to Logic Pro Settings, Audio again, go to your buffer size under Devices, and just change the buffer size to another value, click Apply, let it load, then change it back to the value you want and click Apply again. Changing the buffer size will re-ping or realign the sync of the devices and fix this problem. Sometimes you might not even get the synchronization error dialog. In those cases, you can usually tell it's a sync issue if the playback is really popping and being really crackly. This can often be solved by re-pinging the buffer. Over the years, I've had quite a few people email me and leave comments saying that some of the functions I'm showing in a video are not working for them, or a particular key command isn't working. There are some really simple things to check first, and then if it's really a true bug in Logic, you'll typically need to reset Logic's settings or delete the Logic PLIST file. So before I show you those, let's go through the simple stuff. Now, if you're new to Logic, make sure that you're not in Simplified mode. You can see that you're in Simplified mode by looking in the upper right corner of your main Logic window. If it says that, click on it and then turn on your complete features. You can also get here by going to Logic Pro Settings, Advanced, and again, just turn on the complete features in Logic. So I guess if there's some function or feature that's not working in the Simplified version, it's not included in the Simplified version, it's going to likely be in the advanced features. Now, if it's a key command issue, you might want to try initializing your key commands. To do this, go up to Logic Pro Key Commands, go to Edit Assignments, or you can just press Option K. And then from this menu, select Initialize All Key Commands. And what this is going to do is it's going to set all of your key commands back to the default setting. Some people will forget that they've created some custom key commands or accidentally changed some of them. So this is a great way to get back to those default settings. Now, if it's really a bug or glitch and Logic is just not operating as it should, there are two additional things you can try. One way to do this is to reset Logic's settings. To do this, once again, go up to Logic Pro Settings, and you're going to go to Reset All Settings except Key Command Assignments. It's going to ask you, are you sure you want to do this? And what this is going to do is it's going to reset everything in the settings menu back to its default setting, except for your custom key commands. And what this can also do is reset some glitches or bugs you might be having. If resetting the settings doesn't work, you can take this a step further and completely trash the Logic PLIST file. So to do this, first, make sure Logic Pro is closed. And then what you're going to do is on your desktop here with the Finder in View, go to the Go menu, hold Option, and you're going to see the Hidden Library option show up there, the Hidden Library folder. Load this up, and from here, you're going to go to the Preferences folder. So find Preferences. Here it is. And inside of here, you're going to see a bunch of preference lists. That's what these plist files are. These essentially save the settings that we've been talking about for each app on your computer. So the one you're looking for is com.apple.logic. So what I'm going to do is organize these by name, and then I'm looking for com.apple.logic. So we have com.apple.logic 10.plist. This is the one everyone will have. And then if you've upgraded from an older version of Logic, like Logic 9, you'll also see this com.apple.logic.pro.cs file. But find both of these and either just drag them out into the desktop temporarily if you want to bring them back in just in case, or what you can do is just completely delete these. And what'll happen, let me go ahead and do that. Let's move those to the trash. What's going to happen is now when I open up Logic again, it's going to create a brand new plist file for my settings. And I find often that this really helps if you're having a glitch or a bug, or, something's not loading up properly. It's also going to prompt you to download all of your sounds again. Just click download later, because they're already there. You don't need to download them again. And it's going to give you like the default boot menu and everything. You're also getting rid of all of the preferences or all the settings, and also your key commands. So, it's going to start up in simplified mode. You're going to have to turn that on. And then if you have any custom key commands in here, you're going to have to come in here and set these up again, because you're going to lose all of your custom key commands when you trash your PLIST file. Occasionally, you might get a corrupted project, and you get this dialog saying that Logic cannot open this project. This usually means that when sending files from one person to another, the file transfer or the zipping has corrupted the file. Most of the time, but not all of the time, you can actually rebuild corrupted Logic projects. So if it's a corrupted project that's the issue, open up a fresh, empty project. It's going to force you to create at least one track, so just throw a MIDI track in there, and then save the project. So I'll do a save as. I'll just throw this in the Logic folder. And what you can do at this point is you're going to import the corrupted project into this new project. So to do this, you're going to click here to open the browsers, go to all files, and then you need to find the location of the corrupted project on your computer. I'm just going to go into my desktop, my projects folder. There's the Logic project. So just either click open or double click. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a list of all of the content within that project. So this includes the track numbers, the track names, the type of track, the content on the track, so the regions on the track. You can also import cells if you're working with live loops, the plugins on each track, the sends, the I/O settings. You can keep the bus routing, the bus settings, automation, and notes. So what I recommend doing here is just hitting, making sure this is in focus by clicking in here somewhere. Press Command A to select everything, and then go across the board here and just make sure that everything is selected for each one of these columns. And what you can also do is go into global settings, and you can import some global track settings as well. So once you've done that, just click Add, and this is going to essentially, like I said, import all of the tracks from this corrupted project into my new project. Okay, so once it's all done, you'll see that it has imported all of the tracks, the track stacks, the plugins, the routing, the instruments for that entire project into my new project. Just be aware that this doesn't work all of the time. I've had about maybe 80 or 90% success with this. I have had a couple of projects in the past where it was just a completely corrupted project and lost, unless I have a backup of the project somewhere, or I have an autosave of the project that was done before the corruption happened. If this doesn't work, the project could very well be lost, but in most cases, this has worked for me. Now, it's not like a seamless process. You may still have to go through here and make sure that everything is set up the way it was in the original. Occasionally, I'll find that certain buses or certain aux tracks are not routed properly. So it's not going to be like a seamless process. You're still going to have to come in here and kind of do some cleanup on your project to make sure everything is back to where it was before. Now, you also have to be careful here, because it may not be that the project is corrupted. It could also be that you have a third-party plugin that has gotten corrupted or has some sort of incompatibility issue, causing Logic to not open for some or all projects. So if you open up, multiple Logic projects and you're using third-party plugins in these projects and they all crash up while booting up, it's likely that a corrupted plugin is causing this issue. The best way to handle this, I found, is just to load up a project that crashes and pay attention to the plugins as they are loading. Typically, what will happen is the plugins will load and get to a certain plugin, and then it just crashes. So try to identify the plugin that is causing Logic to crash. Memorize what that plugin is. So from your desktop, open up your Macintosh hard drive, go to Library, and then from here, go to Audio, and from here, go to Plugins. So here's where all of your VST and AU component plugins are stored, along with some other plugin formats. Logic only uses AU components, so just open up the components folder and you'll see a list of all of your installed component plugins. So find the one that you think is crashing Logic. In the past, I had one time I think I was running Contact 5, 6, and 7 at the same time, and Contact 6 of all of them was freezing up. So I had to come in here and I had to find Contact, and I just deleted the plugin and then reopened Logic, and the problem was solved. So, you know, rather than deleting the component file, I'd recommend maybe just dragging it out on the desktop temporarily, then try to reload that project, see if Logic is able to open, make sure you save the project, and then what you're going to want to do is go back and reinstall that component plugin from scratch, and, you know, double check and make sure that one, the plugin is compatible with your version of Logic and your Mac OS, because in some cases it may not be. And it may just be an issue of reinstalling it because the first installation you did corrupted the plugin for some reason. So those are my top 10 tips for troubleshooting Logic Pro. Almost all Logic issues can be solved with one of these tips, unless of course it's user error. But if all else fails and you're still having an issue with Logic and none of these are working, just try deleting Logic completely and then do a fresh reinstall. Sometimes you'll get some sort of a bug or a corrupted file when downloading Logic and installing Logic, which may make Logic not run correctly. So if nothing is working, generally a reinstall will fix it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.